Okay, what do I do for number 2?
Add 4 on both sides.
Good. So 2x minus 4 equals 18. I'm going to add 4 on both sides. So 2x equals 22. I'm going to divide by 2. Good. X equals 11.
I forgot all this.
You forgot it all. That's why we're doing this. A little review. How do we do number 3?
Minus 5 on both sides.
Good. Subtract 5 on both sides.
Y equals 22.
Y equals 22. 2.1 is segment bisectors. The objective is to bisect a segment and to find coordinates in the midpoint. So we had 3 vocab words. To divide into 2 congruent parts is bisect. A segment, ray, line, or plane that intersects a segment at its midpoint is the segment bisector, and a midpoint is the point on a segment that divides it into 2 congruent segments. Okay, so bisect means that there's going to be 2 congruent parts. Segment bisector would probably look something along the lines of this. A line going through a segment at its midpoint. And then a midpoint just looks like this.
We got 3 dots.
Okay? It's in the middle. So this segment is congruent to this segment. And then the midpoint can be found by using the following formula. x1 plus x2 divided by 2 will give you the x. And the y, you're going to do y1 plus y2 divided by 2, which will give you the y. So your answer will always look like a coordinate. Alright, so K is the midpoint of FG, of segment FG. So that splits it in half. So what we know is this segment is congruent to this segment. That's how we mark it congruent, by the same way. We mark it with a little dash. So if 20 is the whole thing, and I know these 2 segments are going to be the same thing, how do I find FK and KG? What would I do? That would add up to the number, and they would be the same thing. So, what do you think I'm going to divide 20 by to get each little segment?
10, 15,
I'm always going to divide by 2. What's 20 divided by 2? 10. Would that make sense if FK is 10 and KG is 10? Yeah. 10 plus 10 gives me 20. Because I have to have the same number. So I'm always going to divide by 2 if I have the whole thing and I need each little piece. So FK equals 10 and KG equals 10. Now let's take a look at number 2. This one, they give us one of the little segments. Okay, is 7. Now, M's the midpoint. That means it splits it in half. So that means that this side is congruent to this side. So you can mark it with 2 dashes for this one. So if JM is 7, what would ML be?
7.
It's going to be 7. They have to be the same. These little pieces will always be the same. Okay, if they are marked congruent, if it's a midpoint. So this is 7, ML is 7. How would I find JL, which is the whole thing? I'm going to add them 2 together. What's 7 plus 7? 14. So JL equals 14. What we know here is that this is a midpoint. This splits it in half. So what do we know about 2x and 8? They're equal to each other. Okay, these segments would both be marked congruent. Okay, so how would I make an equation? What am I going to do? Just 2x equals 8. And we're going to divide by 2. So x equals 4. Let me go through that again. So, we know, let me erase this first. When we have a segment bisector, it splits this segment into 2 equal parts. So let's pretend we don't see this here, and we don't see this here. Right away, I know that this side is congruent to this side. So from here to here is the same as here to here. They told me that this is 8. So this side over here must also be what? 8. They have to be the same thing. But they asked us to solve for x. So, and it was 2x. So I had to set an equation, 2x equals 8. There will be a quiz next week one day.
Next week.
So, let's look at this. It says, find the coordinates of the midpoint of GH. So we are given two coordinates here. 4, 0 and -3, -1. So, to find my x's, what I'm going to do, to find my x value, I am going to add the x's and divide by 2, just like up here. What are my two x's in these coordinates?
4, 0.
G and wait, no, not here.
What are my x's?
4 and 0.
Zero's not a... 4 and -3. Good. So I'm going to do 4 plus -3 divided by what? 2. Okay, that's going to be my x. How do I find my y? What are my y's here?
0, 0, -1.
Very good. 0 and -1. So 0 plus -1 divided by 2, just like up here.
Why do your 0 look so small and not a 0? It looks like an O.
I'm sorry. So then, I'm going to solve here. What's 4 plus -3?
1.
Okay? So I have 1 over 2, right? 4 plus 3 gives me the 1. Then I'm just going to leave that 2. Okay, what's 0 plus -1? -1 over 2. Couldn't we leave our answer like this? 1/2, comma, -1/2?
No.
Nah.
We have to put
Yeah,
a
yeah,
line
yes,
over
you
it.
can, yes, you can.
Yeah, of course you can. This is perfect. This is our coordinate.
Well, you can basically leave anything.
Over 2 is 1.
Wait,
Okay.
no one said anything about reducing.
Well, we never write a coordinate like 2 over 2 because it comes out to be a 1. What about -5 over 2? Should we leave that?
Yeah.
We can leave it, or you can do -2.5.
Which we're going to leave it.
You can leave it. So what did we learn about today?
Segment bisect.
Segment bisectors. And what else? And the midpoint formula.
So while
If you have questions, you will write them here. Okay? And then a sample test question from this section. I'm going to do a challenging one with you.
see, look, why you doing
Okay.
challenges?
All right. So, let's say this is A, B, C, and B is the midpoint. So that means that each of these are congruent. Let's say this is 5 plus X, and this is 30. How would I write an equation here?
There we go. 5x or x plus
5 plus X
equals 30.
equals 30.